The night wind screamed through the broken cracks of the old cabin, shaking the loose wooden walls like they might fall apart at any moment. The door creaked open slowly, crying like something alive. Elias Boon stood in the doorway, frozen, his breath trapped in his chest. He had waited through a long, cruel winter for this night. Every coin he owned had been sent away. The letter had promised her arrival. Tonight was supposed to change his life forever. But the moment his eyes adjusted to the dark, hope turned to ice. From the thick wooden beam in the center of the cabin, a woman hung by a rope. Her body swayed gently as the wind pushed through. The doorway? A torn white wedding dress clung to her thin frame. Her bare feet dangled above the wooden floor, pale and still. An oil lamp flickered weakly nearby, throwing long shadows that crawled across the walls. Elias's hat slipped from his fingers and hit the floor. His heart felt like it had stopped beating. This was the bride he had waited for. The woman he had fixed the cabin for. The woman he had imagined sitting at his table, warming the cold nights that had followed him for years. A sudden gust of wind rushed inside. The body moved. Then something worse happened. Her eyelids fluttered. A faint sound escaped her lips, barely. Louder than the wind itself. She was alive. Elias rushed forward without thinking. His hands shook as he reached for the rope digging into her neck. His voice cracked as he whispered a prayer he had not spoken in years. The knife in his hand trembled, but his grip stayed firm. He wrapped one arm around her weak body and cut the rope in one clean motion. She collapsed into him. Elias dropped to his knees, holding her like she might vanish if he let go. He laid her gently on the narrow bed near the wall. Her skin was cold, her lips dry and cracked. Deep red marks circled her neck. He poured water from a jug and carefully tipped it into her mouth. At first it spilled out, then her throat moved. She swallowed, her eyes opened slowly. They were dark, filled with fear and pain. Her weak hand grabbed his wrist as if he were the last solid thing left in the world. "Please," she whispered. "Save me." Elias nodded, his jaw tight. "You will live," he said. "I promise." He tore strips from his old shirt and wrapped them around her neck. His movements were rough but careful, driven by fear stronger than anything he had felt since the war. He had seen death before. Too much of it. He would not watch it take another soul tonight. The oil lamp finally died, leaving only the glow. From the fireplace, Elias stayed beside her, holding her hand, listening to her breathing. Each breath sounded like it might be the last. His heart pounded harder than any battle drum he remembered. Years ago, Elias Boon had been a cavalryman. He had survived blood-soaked fields and screaming nights. When the war ended, he returned home with scars on his body and emptiness in his soul. His wife had been killed in a raid. His young son followed soon after. After that, Elias pulled away. From the world, he spoke to no one. He trusted nothing. His life became a small patch of dry land, a few horses, and this lonely cabin, until hope returned. Loneliness had finally pushed him to send his savings away, asking for a woman willing to start over with a broken rancher. The letter promised. She would come with a first spring coach. From that day on, Elias worked like a man reborn. He fixed the walls, built a table, cleaned the dust of years away. He even placed dried flowers on the windowsill, something he had not done since his first wife died, and now she lay here nearly dead. The woman stirred again. Her lips moved, whispering words Elias could not understand. Then she looked straight at him. "They want to kill you too," she said. Elias froze. Old memories rushed back. Ambushes, traps, men smiling before pulling triggers. He felt the familiar weight of danger settle into his bones. Outside, the wind howled louder, like a Warning carried across the land. He squeezed her hand gently. "You are safe here," he said, though he did not yet know if it was true. Hours passed. Elias never slept. He listened to every sound, every breath she took. Somewhere in the darkness, a fragile trust began to form between them. She whispered her name once. Clara. Just before dawn, the sound came, hooves, at first distant. Then closer. Heavy, many of them. Elias stood slowly and reached for his rifle. Clara's eyes filled with terror. "They are back," she whispered. Elias stepped toward the door, his body tense, his mind clear. Whatever was coming next would decide everything. Part to the hooves, stopped just outside the cabin. Elias held his breath. Rifle pressed tight against his shoulder. The fire cracked softly behind him, the only warm sound left in the world. Clara clutched the blanket around her neck, her eyes fixed on the door like she already knew what waited on the other side. A fist slammed against the wood. "Open up." A man's voice growled. "We know she's in there." Elias did not answer. The door shook again, harder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling beams. Clara's breathing turned fast and shallow. Elias stepped closer to her and lowered his voice. "Who are they?" he asked. Her lips trembled. "Men who buy people like cattle," she whispered. "They said I belonged to them. When I tried to run, they punished me. They said if I lived through the night, they would come back to finish it." Another kick hit the door. Elias felt something old rise inside him. Not fear, not yet. It was the same cold calm he used to feel before a charge. Before men fell, he chambered around. Last warning, the voice outside shouted. "Give her up, and we walk away." Elias stepped to the door and spoke through the wood, his voice low and steady. "You step off my land now." Silence followed, then laughter. Ugly and cruel. The door burst open. 3 men rushed inside. Their coats were dark, their faces hard, eyes sharp with greed. One carried a pistol, another held a rope. The third smiled like this was a game. He had played many times before. The first man barely crossed the doorway before Elias fired. The rifle thundered through the cabin. The man dropped instantly, blood staining the floor. The other 2 froze in shock. Elias moved without thinking, firing again. The second man screamed and fell against the wall, clutching his leg. The third man raised his pistol. Elias dove as the shot cracked the air. Wood splintered above the bed. Clara cried out. Elias rolled, came up on one knee, and struck the man hard with the rifle stock. Bone cracked. The pistol fell useless to the floor. The man staggered back, dazed. Elias did not hesitate. He pulled the trigger once more. Silence crashed down, thick and heavy. Smoke hung in the air. Elias stood breathing hard, his hands steady. Despite the chaos, he checked the doorway, then the fallen men. None moved. Only then did he turn to Clara. She was sitting up now, eyes wide, tears streaking her dirty face. She stared at Elias like she was looking at something she had never seen before. "You didn't run," she whispered. Elias lowered the rifle. "Neither did you." He barred the door and dragged the bodies outside, leaving them in the cold dawn. Light, when he returned, he washed the blood from his hands and face. Clara watched him the entire time. When he finished, he sat beside her again. "Tell me everything," he said. Clara swallowed. Her voice was stronger now, steadied by survival. She told him about the wagon she had escaped from, about promises, of marriage that turned into chains, about men who sold lies to desperate women and then sold the women themselves. She had heard Elias's name by chance, a rancher who lived alone, a place far from towns. She ran toward it, hoping it was real. Elias listened without interrupting. Every word added weight to his chest. When she finished, the sun was rising. Pale light filled the cabin. For the first time, Elias saw her clearly. Dirt-streaked face, bruises along her arms. But beneath it all, strength. A quiet fire that had not gone out, no matter how hard they tried to kill it. "They'll send more," she said softly. Elias nodded. "I know." He stood and looked around the cabin. The table he built. The flowers on the windowsill. The life he had tried to start. Then he looked back at Clara. "So will I," he said. That day, Elias hid the tracks, burned what could be burned, and prepared what could not. He showed Clara how to load a pistol, how to stay quiet, how to move when it mattered. As night fell again, fear returned, heavier than before. But this time, it did not stand alone. Something else stood with it. Resolve whatever those men wanted. They would not take it. Not from him. Not from her. The wind howled once more outside the cabin, but inside, two broken souls waited together, and neither planned to surrender. The morning sun rose slowly over the wide prairie, washing the land in soft gold light. Smoke still drifted above the cabin, and the ground in front of it was marked by broken wood, fallen men, and dark stains in the dirt. The night of terror had ended, but its weight still hung heavy in the air. Elias sat on the front step, his back bent, his side wrapped tightly with a clean cloth given by the neighbors. Pain pulsed through his body with every breath, but he stayed upright. He had survived worse. What mattered now was that Clara was alive. She sat beside him, wrapped in a thick blanket. Her face was pale, and the marks on her neck were still angry and red, but her eyes were clear. She was no longer trembling. Slowly, carefully, she leaned her head against Elias's shoulder. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The neighbors finished their work quietly. They gathered the weapons, put out the last small fires, and led the bodies away from the cabin. Before leaving, one of the men stopped and looked back at Elias with new respect. "You are not alone anymore, Boon," he said. "This land knows." What you did, when they were gone, silence returned. Not the heavy silence of loneliness Elias had lived with for years, but a calmer one. A shared silence. Clara broke it first. "They took me from the coach," she said softly. "They said I was property. They said you would never come in time." Elias clenched his jaw. "They were wrong," he said. She looked at him then, really looked at him. At the scars on his hands, at the tired strength in his eyes. "You cut the rope," she said. "You chose me." Elias swallowed. "I could not watch death take another soul," he replied. "Not again." The sun climbed higher. Birds returned to the sky. Life moved forward, slow but steady. Elias stood and helped Clara to her feet. Together, they stepped inside the cabin. The place was damaged, but it still stood. Bullet holes marked the walls. The table Elias had built was scratched and broken at one corner. Yet the cabin was warm. Alive. Days passed. Neighbors returned with food and supplies. A doctor came and treated Elias's wound. Clara grew stronger with each sunrise. She helped clean the cabin, moving carefully but with purpose. At night, they sat by the fire and spoke quietly, sharing pieces of their past. Loss, fear, hope, trust grew between them, gentle and real. One evening, as the sky turned orange and purple, Elias stood outside watching the land stretch endlessly before him. Clara joined him, her hands slipping into his without fear. "I was sent here to die," she said. "But instead, I found a place to live." Elias looked at her, emotion heavy in his chest. "This cabin was built from grief," he said. "But maybe it can become a home." Clara smiled through tears. "I would like that." The seasons slowly changed, the land healed. So did they. Elias no longer waited alone on the porch. Clara's laughter filled the cabin. The dried flowers on the windowsill were replaced with fresh ones. The silence that once haunted him was gone. He had waited all winter for a bride. Instead, he found something stronger than fate. He found purpose, and in the wild heart of the West, where cruelty often ruled, kindness had won by the simple act of cutting a rope and choosing to protect a life as the sun set beyond the horizon. Their shadows stretched across the land, joined as one. The lone rancher was alone, no more.